here at Snape Maltings in Aldeburgh in Suffolk. Historically, Snape is famous as the home of Aldeburgh Music Festival, which was started in 1948 by Benjamin Britten. Britten originally conceived Aldeburgh as a festival for all the arts, but music soon took precedence. Started last year by two artists, Sarah Lucas and Abigail Lane, who live locally, Snap draws on Suffolk's remarkable wealth of artistic talent. With residents like Brian Eno, Maggie Hamlin and the rising contemporary star Ryan Gander, Snap can genuinely claim to be local and global simultaneously.
The installation here is called Over the Horizon. It's named after a kind of failed radar system that was developed on Orford Ness in Suffolk, just a few miles from here. It was owned by the MOD since, well, it's been a military site since the First World War. And there's an atomic weapons research establishment there, which is now a kind of, decaying bunker architecture that's sort of covered in shingle, camouflaged, so they couldn't see these buildings from the air. And they're fascinating sites to work with. And as a child, when I used to come to Aldeburgh, like on holiday, you'd hear these stories of like, oh, what goes on over there? There's all sorts of, it's radioactive. And of course, all of these rumours, and it made it into a really fascinating, frightening, quite a spooky place, really. So I really wanted to explore it.
What are the main difficulties of coordinating this exhibition?
Well, in a way you don't curate it because each artist has their own space, so in a way it's a series of individual shows and they're responsible for their own thing, so I never use the word curate myself. Having said that, I have organised it in such a way and I am trying to steer things a little bit. Yeah, it is a difficult space because each thing requires something quite different. Brian Eno was from the area and known for being in the area, from Woodbridge, which is really close by. Yes, he made it for Paul Stolper's exhibition, and it would have been nice to have something new. I knew that was pretty much going to be impossible, so I just thought this would be something we could borrow, and we asked outright if we could borrow it, and we thought it would work really well on its own in the Dovecote space, which is a very specific space. The speakers obviously look like flowers. And then there's a soundtrack which hasn't been recorded before. Actually, I don't think it's been recorded as such for another kind of play. It comes from within the plinth.
These recordings were made on Orford Ness by Chris Watson, who's an eminent sound recordist. We spent sort of 3 days, I think, together, kind of walking the Ness and finding elements of sound that perhaps you might go unnoticed. We were looking for sort of small elements of sound like birds nesting in ducts, or we recorded the sound of the aerial masts where you can actually hear the BBC World Service, which we actually recorded off by putting microphones onto the masts in the aerial field. So we were kind of looking for ways to represent Orford Ness in all of its kind of in its dark atmosphere.
From the BBC.
Maggie Hamlin's made a sound installation. Obviously there's Brian Eno, Mark Limbrick, another Suffolk artist, has made a sound piece. Sound's a big theme this year. How's that come about?
Absolutely by chance, really. I mean, I was aware that it was developing, but it wasn't a let's get a, there was no theme to the show, there never is. I mean, who would have predicted Maggie would end up with a sound work?
You are the sea. I am the shifting shingle. With greedy lovers' tongues and lips, you suck me in and in again. We rise together.
This is Maggie Hamlin's installation, You Are the Sea. It's a real departure for her. She's known really as a painter and a sculptor, and this is her first piece of sand art. She made it by capturing the noise of the water trapped in the underground sleuth at Thorpe Ness, which is nearby. And then she mixed it with the recital of her own love poem to the sea. But what makes it even stronger is this painting, which is part of a cycle entitled Wall of Water. And it's inspired by the sight of the sea waves crashing against the wall at Southwold.
I think they need to have a high standard of art for somewhere like this. I think it's very easy to just be absorbed in something that feels provincial, and we're not that far from London. There's great art shown in London. If you want to have something here, it has to have something of its own, has its own personality in a way. There's no point competing.
Although Maggie Hamlin and Emily Richardson clearly have very different visions of the Suffolk coastal landscape, they're both heirs to a tradition started by Constable in the 18th century. With so many talented locals snapping at their heels, Suffolk's magnetic power over artists shouldn't wane anytime soon.